And welcome back to another episode of Life Outside the Academics. Pom, 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 pom.
The whole time. I think things are much tougher now compared. At that time there were so few black graduates, that black graduates from Rhodes quite easily got jobs, whereas now there are a lot more black graduates. So, being black and having a degree from Rhodes doesn't automatically get you into a job. But I think it did like 15 years ago. Um, yeah, I mean, it's not your fault, but there are jobs. People do get employed. It's just not as clear as like you do pharmacy, you become a pharmacist. You do BA, you become a primary school teacher. It's not always the same.
And also speaking about the issue of like being a black graduate from the Rhodes, I want to understand something. I'm sure you've already noticed the number of white students is increasing yearly. Why is it so? Welcome back. I'm Kondiri Ugala. Welcome to the show of life, Life Beside Academia. And today I'm joined by Miss Judith Reynolds. She's a lecturer at Rhodes University. She's also a course coordinator for the Extended Humanities program. Besides that, she also taught in Poland and UK before she came back here at Rhodes in 2005. Welcome, Miss Judith.
How do you know all that stuff about me?
I did my research there.
Oh, well done. Okay.
How are you, by the way?
I'm well, thank you.
I'm also. But first, I want us to dive into your academic journey as teaching abroad in UK and Poland. Tell me, how did that shape your learning and teaching skills?
So I taught English as a foreign language in Poland. So I taught all sorts of levels from very low to high levels that would be similar to students here. And then in the UK, I taught students who were coming mostly from Asia to do postgraduate degrees at British universities, well, at a British university. It's very different teaching, or certainly the English foreign language teaching is very different. I don't teach my students English. We teach, we deal with the concepts, so I had to learn the difference between teaching a language and teaching more academic and conceptual stuff. But it taught me to kind of lesson plan, it taught me to think about, what am I doing, what are the students doing, how to think about kind of variety in the class, in the lessons, so that we aren't always doing exactly the same thing. So it was good discipline for me as a teacher to teach and to think about assessment and how criteria meet, what you've been teaching and so on. So just general, basic good teaching skills I think I got from teaching English.
All right. And after all those years that you were teaching abroad, what made you to decide to come back at Rhodes in 2005?
Okay, so my first thing was that I just got a little bit bored with teaching English because I felt like I was teaching like the same grammar several times a year to different groups every year, and I was just like, I need to go and teach something more interesting. I hadn't automatically decided I was coming back to Rhodes. I wasn't even really sure what I was going to do. But when I left Poland, I contacted someone who was working at Rhodes and I said, I'm going to be looking for a job, and she was like, there's jobs. Apply. So I applied. I applied for 2 jobs. I came to the interview for this job. I accepted it straight away and didn't even go to an interview for the second job. So I was really lucky to find work, and work that I wanted to do so quickly and easily.
That's good. And most people are not sure about the duty of a course coordinator. And as a course coordinator, can you please tell me what is your responsibility?
Okay, so my responsibilities are a bit different probably from course coordinators in other programs. Because we are an academic program and we admit students straight into the Humanities Extended Studies program, I actually do admissions for students into the program. So the dean looks at applications, he sends some of them to me, and then I choose whether to accept them into the program or not. So course coordinators don't generally do that in other faculties or in other departments, because the dean admits people to a faculty and then people choose their subjects, whereas I actually do admissions into the Humanities Extended Studies program. But the other things I do are normal course coordinator things, making sure that the marks are in, sending out DP warnings, that kind of thing. Just checking in with the other teachers to see what's going on, seeing if there's any, discussing if there's issues with any of the students, and the general admin kind of stuff. But the admissions that I do is only really in the extended degree programs.
All right. Most people don't know that you are also a PhD candidate here at Rhodes.
I am, yes.
Can you please tell us deep about what your research is all about?
Okay, so it's taken me a very long time. I started another PhD and then abandoned it. But I'm really happy with what I'm looking at now. So I'm doing a study on student resilience. So I'm looking at how non-academic things affect people's academic life. It's in student language, I'm looking at how life stuff affects school, right? And how students manage that. Like, what do they do to cope with those challenges of the multiple roles and the multiple things and the multiple stresses going on in their lives. So that's what my PhD is about.
Yeah, I saw that one of your strand in the topic is about young student fathers. What are you hoping to get through that information? Why is it important to highlight those kind of stories?
So obviously being a parent is quite a big role to take on alongside being a student, right? So there's potentially quite a lot of responsibility and quite a lot of stress there. I decided to look at fathers because there's actually quite a lot of research on student mothers in South Africa. So although mothers obviously also take on big roles, some often bigger roles, I just thought it would be interesting to look at fathers. And it's really about how that affects them academically, how they manage these different roles of being a father and being a student at the same time, how they cope with that. That's the resilience stuff. Like they face challenges, how do they deal with them? Yes, so that is one of the topics that I've looked at is student fathers.
And another one that you are looking at, which is very personal to me, is about transition into society, how students adjust into universities. I saw one of your posts in the group when you were asking for members to participate. As a student who also had some struggle to adjust into this university, since I was coming back from Venda, we speak Venda the whole day. Now I'm coming here, I have to speak English. According to you, when you observe it through all these years that you have been here at Rhodes, what kind of impact is it having on students who are struggling to adjust into the university?
Okay, so in my research, I'm not really looking at academic side. I'm looking at how the non-academic affects the academic side. So interestingly, the big thing that I didn't have a question about this, but the big thing that came up for students was friendships. So making relationships, finding people, finding your support group, dealing with loneliness, cancel culture, how people they seem to make friends and then the person's not so friendly afterwards or whatever. So that really that was the biggest theme actually that came out of those interviews. There were other things as well, stuff around like different social classes, and that also ties into the friendship thing, like how can you be friends with people who are such a different social class from you, language a little bit as well. But yeah, that kind of finding your place socially was the big theme that came up in those interviews.
And then moving on, your duty, you are a lecturer. I know that you teach anthropology and journalism and media studies one, but you also have time to help students in the Rhodes University Student Bureau. I want to understand why.
On the Facebook page.
Yeah, on the Facebook page. Why do you feel like you have to do that while most of the teachers around or lecturers, they are not interested into that?
Some of that just kind of happened accidentally. So, because I teach in the extended program, and like a lot of my students are on NSFAS, so I've had to learn a lot of the NSFAS information. Also, I was a warden for 4 years, so I kind of understand some of the res situation. So I have quite a broad knowledge of things, like across the university admissions rules, various academic rules, NSFAS rules, although now NSFAS changes so often that I've lost track of what's going on half the time, kind of how res works. And so I was a member of the Facebook page, and then I just started kind of answering questions. and answering more questions, and then people realized I was answering questions and they started tagging me. They also inboxed me a lot. Like in that late January, early February, I can easily get 50 Facebook inbox messages from people I don't know.
Yes.
A day, right? A day. So it's unfortunately kind of turned into a bit of a full-time job in that early part of the year. But I just feel like it's so important. I feel like there are people at this university who probably might not be here if they hadn't asked me a question and I hadn't been able to sort things out for them. And it's not maybe that they couldn't have done it themselves, but it's just that, you know, I know who to talk to, or I know who to ask, or I know what to ask. And so I can often kind of speed things up for people.
I'm one of the students who was gonna arrive here earlier. If I didn't
Okay.
text you, you told me
Okay.
that nah, you have to wait for your clearance SMS. Like I waited for the clearance SMS and sent you everything. Then you said like, nah, you can come now on the day. So I wanna ask you, don't you feel like some of the time, you know how students are annoying? Don't you get annoyed by their behavior? Because some of them just write texts which are not supposed to be written there in the group.
I have quite a lot of patience with new students, like people who are applicants, people who haven't come here yet. I understand people are extremely stressed. This is really big life stuff, right? It's like, it's your money, it's your life, it's your future. So people repeat the same questions and things, and I do try to keep patient. I have a bit less patient with current students who really could find this out from other people, or who should already know this, or who could look the information up in other ways. So I do sometimes get a little bit grumpy with current students because I understand that still they may be stressed around subs and money and whatever, but I do feel like, look, you've had a little bit of time here. You maybe could have asked this last year, or you know that you should ask your warden this, not me, or whatever. But with new applicants, I completely understand that this is the only link they often have with the university. So I do have quite a lot of patience with them. Although I have been told that I'm quite just like that with my answers. And that's just because that's all I have time to do when there's so many questions and things coming in. Because it's not just, at that time of year, it's not just coming in via Facebook. I'm also getting WhatsApp messages from people I've taught, email messages, sometimes from people I know, sometimes from people I don't know. I don't know, my email address seems to float around the universe. So there's a lot going on, and there's certain groups of people who are just so crazy busy at that time. So I do sometimes just write as few words as I can. Nobody gets a greeting. Sometimes people send me these nice messages like, "Hello ma'am, how are you? I hope you're well." And I'm just like, yes. That's my answer.
And as a course coordinators for the humanities program, outside there is a misconception about this extended program. Some people will say that means you are not that good enough, you can't go to this degree or what. What do you have to say about extended programs?
Okay, so extended programs are intended to give opportunities to people who might not have opportunities to come to Rhodes. Like people have to have a bachelor's admission, but we're taking in people with slightly lower points or slightly lower English marks or some combination of those two. So it just means, and it's particularly we take in people who are local for the humanities program, right? So, it's horrible to go to school in Makanda and get 35 matric points, you've got bachelor's admission, but you can't go to Rhodes. Whereas the extended degree program means you can come to Rhodes, right? You're going to take an extra year to do your degree, but you can come to the university. So we don't only take local students, but we do take quite a lot of local students. I think the proof is in where people end up. There's lots of people who've come through the extended degree program with master's degrees, PhDs. Just because you're coming in with slightly lower points doesn't mean that you are going to be restricted for the rest of your degree. And often, actually, those people with slightly lower points, sometimes they're like the top students of under-resourced schools.
Yeah.
So they haven't got great points because they haven't had computers. Maybe there was no teacher for this subject for a year or 6 months or something. They've had to teach themselves stuff. And sometimes those are really motivated strong, independent students, but they haven't got the kind of marks that people from certain other kinds of schools have got. So it just tells you something about how someone's marks in matrics. It tells you nothing about their capacity, to study or to go on and do postgraduate study.
And with the current state that we are at as South Africans, can you advise somebody to take a humanity program, since there is this norm that people are saying like there are no jobs for humanities graduates?
Okay. My students have been asking me that, and actually I just put a post on my Facebook today asking students who've graduated with humanities degrees what they're doing. I think with humanities it's hard straight from a BA or a BSS to find work. I think you often need some kind of postgraduate. Journalism might be different. Sometimes I think people do get jobs or internships with, say, a BA majoring in journalism. But often with humanities, you need to do something beyond the bachelor's degree. So whether that's a PGCE, whether it's an honours, whether it's more than that, whether it's a diploma. But I think part of it, yes, I think there are people who don't get jobs, but there are also, or take a long time to get jobs sometimes. It's like finding your place. But often people do find jobs, and often they may need to study more, or to get to the next job, they may need to study more. But I think there are, there's research posts, there's communications posts, there's teaching posts, there's, I think there are things, and I think if you can get a job with a bachelor's degree or a humanities degree, including some postgrad, you're going to get a much better job than you're going to get with your matric. So, it's not like you're just going to walk out and walk into a job now. In the people who came in 2005, a lot of them did walk straight into internships at SABC, and they've worked at the SABC for the rest, for the last 15 years. Or they've got an internship in a newspaper, and then they've moved on to other newspapers, and they've been solidly employed in journalism, the whole time. I think things are much tougher now. I think there are, at that time there were so few black graduates that black graduates from Rhodes quite easily got jobs, whereas now there are a lot more black graduates. So, being black and having a degree from Rhodes doesn't automatically get you into a job, where I think it did like 15 years ago. It's not straightforward, but there are jobs. People do get employed. It's just not as clear as like, you do pharmacy, you become a pharmacist. You do BA, you become a primary school teacher. It's not always as simple as that.
And also speaking about the issue of like being a black graduate from here at Rhodes, I want to understand something. I'm sure you have already noticed the number of white students is decreasing yearly at Rhodes. Why is it so?
I'm not entirely sure. I think the big change happened, I think part of it is to do with NSFAS. So Rhodes used to, all universities used to get like a block amount of funding that they could use for financial aid from NSFAS. And because Rhodes didn't have a lot of students on NSFAS, they didn't have a lot of money for NSFAS. And then when students started applying directly to NSFAS, a lot more black students came to Rhodes, because there was no restriction, like it was individual people applying for money rather than Rhodes getting a block amount of money that they could spend. I don't know where the white people are going. Stellenbosch, I think Stellenbosch is like, and maybe the University of Pretoria, I think they're like the last white outpost of universities. My niece is here, she's white, she's having a perfectly good time and is quite happy at Rhodes. I can't explain that one. And I don't work with white students generally, I mostly work with black and coloured students, so I don't really have an answer. But in a way it's great, like we're much more, this is much more like what the population is, right? Like this population is 10% white, more or less, so our numbers are probably not that far off what the South African population is.
And also, what made you to be in academia? Was it also the issue of that there are no jobs maybe here in South Africa? You also went to UK and Poland, and I think like the reason maybe that you went to UK and Poland was because that there are no jobs here in South Africa.
No, I didn't even try for jobs here, to be honest. But yes, it wasn't easy just walking out with a master's degree, and even a master's degree into a job. It was a lot easier to find work in Poland or in other European countries or Asia at that stage. But it was also kind of like a lot of people my age at that time did that, so a lot of people would finish university and then go to another country to work, usually the UK. And then some of them came back and some of them stayed or some of them moved to other places. I wasn't necessarily trying to leave South Africa permanently, but it certainly was easier to find work elsewhere as a first job, right? But once I had that experience, things opened up for me here.
So can you tell me about the difference in terms of the quality of education here in South Africa and the one in UK?
It's quite hard to talk about that because I didn't teach I taught at a UK university, but only in short courses for students before they've started their main degree. So these were students coming in as English foreign language speakers from like China and Taiwan and Thailand and Japan, and they would do these 6 or 8 or 10 week courses before they started their degree. So I taught on that. I didn't actually teach full time in a university in the UK. So it's very hard for me to compare. I don't know exactly what they were doing. I do know, I was teaching people who had degrees already. They were coming in to do master's degrees. So they had a degree from China and then they were going to come do a master's degree in the UK. Some of the readings we did for them were a lot easier than the readings you guys do in your first term and first year. I was like, really? We're doing this? So I don't think it was harder. I certainly don't think they were doing harder work than you. I think you guys probably have a tougher time as foreign students do in the UK. But I can't really make a comparison because it's not like I was teaching, during proper term time in the UK.
And I once saw your text, since I'm saying like I'm a fan of you there in Facebook.
You're a fan of me. I didn't even know I had fans.
You once said that if somebody's not sure about what to study, then they must first have self-introspection and check what do they want to study. So I want to understand from you, what advice can you give to somebody who is in grade 12 or who's in a gap year, who doesn't know which degree to take right now?
Okay, it is tricky. But a lot of people are restricted by what they did at matric. If you don't have pure maths and you don't have a good mark for pure maths, you are not going to become a pharmacist, a doctor, an engineer, an accountant, any of those things. So, you have to be realistic about what you can do. There's no point in thinking you can become an engineer with your 50% for maths lit. Sorry, people. Don't be too caught up on finding a profession straight away. You don't have to come here to become a lawyer. You can come here and do a degree and figure it out as you go along. There are all kinds of weird and wonderful jobs that people are not terribly aware of that do exist, and jobs are changing and jobs are going to keep changing. I think we're going to need people who are really good at using AI in future, for example, not just who can do the basics, but who can really train it and whatever. So kind of trust the process a little bit and go with what you're good at, go with what you can do well in, rather than doing, I have to become a lawyer because that's the only job, that's the only subject I can see here that actually looks like a job to me, right? Rather go with your strengths, rather go with what you're good at, than feel like you have to do law because that's the only thing that's available and possible. And then your degree takes 5 years and you don't, you can't become a lawyer anyway because law is not your thing. Sorry, that's a complicated answer. I don't think I have a straightforward one for that.
Yeah, it's not straightforward. And I was going to ask, so you're saying it's all about passion, not what the job market wants right now.
It's got to be a combination of the it's a combination, I think, but rather go with what your strengths are. Like if you're really good at something, don't give that up to do the thing that your uncle tells you that you should do, right? Rather go with what you're good at and what you can excel in. So yes, I think so. But obviously, you've also got to keep an eye on keep options open, really. That's always what I say to students. Keep options open. Keep doors open. If that doesn't work out, what is your plan B? If that doesn't work out, what's your plan C? So have combinations of things. If you're not going to become a lawyer, what else do you have? What can you do? What is open to you?
As somebody who also want to be in academia, maybe in the next 10 years, I want to understand from you, what challenges did you face when you were pursuing to be in academia?
Starting out, I'm not sure. But what I can, I think things were different in 2005. Getting jobs in academia were a little bit easier. And so you could get a job with a master's degree, which I think is getting harder and harder. I think more and more you kind of need the PhD before they, depends on the post. But I think what's tricky about being an academic is that there are so many different aspects to the job, right? So there's teaching, there's research, there's community engagement, there's kind of professional work, there's what you do for the university itself, and to get promoted you have to, personal promotion, to move from lecturer to senior lecturer to associate professor to professor. You have to become more and more, better and better at a whole bunch of these things. So it's quite a complex job, and there's a lot of balancing. Today, this week is really heavy with teaching, so I can't do anything else. But next week I need to set aside some time to do this, and I need to keep aware of these other things that are expected from me. There's a lot of stuff that students don't see. You see as teaching, right? Yeah. But actually it's a big part of the job, but it's not the only part of the job. People are editing journals, they are, running conferences, they are chairing committees, so there's a lot of other things that go on that aren't visible, I think, to students, but that are part of an academic post in an academic institution.
So can you really say which problems have you encountered maybe with the students? We know how students got this behavior, maybe in class, somebody's busy with their phone, somebody's not listening to you, somebody's coming 20 minutes later in a class. How do you deal with those kind of students?
Some of the students who are busy on their phone, I just leave them. I figure if they're not interested, they can... Some of it I'm just like, it'll all work out at the end of the year. We'll see who was paying attention and who was not. I don't like students being late, particularly because the rooms that I teach in, it often means the students are getting up and it's noisy and it's distracting for me and distracting for everybody. So I have been known to lock the door. You can ask students I've taught. I say, what time does class start? Okay, what time does class start tomorrow? Okay, if you're not here by 5 minutes after that, the door's going to be locked tomorrow. And then they knock on the door and they're like, ma'am! And I'm like, ooh. And then you do that a couple of times and then suddenly they're much better at getting to class on time. But I also understand people have lots of things going on in their lives, so I can't always know why it is that someone's on their phone or why it is that someone's late. Sometimes they've had other things happening.
Speaking about a lot going on with people's lives, as somebody who's a lecturer, what I know is that a teacher who's from secondary teacher or a primary teacher, they can easily spot if the student is going through something. Can you spot your students if one of your bright students or just one of your students is coming across some adversity in life?
Sometimes yes and sometimes no. So I have quite a small class. I have 30 something students. So I can tell if someone's being quite different from how they usually are. But if someone is very quiet and they're very quiet, I won't necessarily pick up that something's wrong. But because I spend a lot of time with my students, sometimes they come and tell me things, or they WhatsApp me and say, "Ma'am, this is happening." Um, but obviously, if you're teaching 300 people, you're not going to pick up, right? You're not going to notice. So, and I think that's part of why friendships are really important. And that's something that some of the students said, like I was at boarding school, I was in a room with other people. So if I was down, people in the room would notice. But now I'm in a room on my own in res. If I don't go to meals, maybe no one notices. So you've got to have friends. You've got to have people who notice whether you're going to meals. They notice whether you're doing other things, because lecturers in big classes are not going to pick that up. Like, it's just impossible to do that with 100 or 200 or 300 students.
Right now, as we speak, as we're about to wrap up, there is somebody who maybe got a G7 warning, who maybe is going to come across this video. What advice can you give for them? Because surely if you have a G7 warning, it's very scary, and with the way that people write in the group that you're about to face exclusion.
So a G7 warning doesn't necessarily mean you're about to face exclusion. It means that if you don't improve by the end of the year, you may be excluded. But I mean, G7 warnings go out to people. I mean, sometimes they've got like 48 for something. It's really not that much of a crisis. You just need to get like 52 in the second semester and you're going to be okay for that subject. So take it seriously. Something has to change. Something has to be different by the end of the year if you've got a G7 warning. But it's not necessarily a crisis, I mean, sometimes it is. Sometimes if you're getting like 23 and 18, and then maybe this is really not the place, or this is not the time. Maybe this year is not the time for you to be studying. Maybe you need to leave and come back when whatever else is going on has settled down. So you get those kind of G7 warnings, but you need to figure out what it is. Talk to someone, whether it's your warden, whether it's the dean, whether it's the faculty officer. Talk to them about what's going on here. Can you save this, or should you just go home? In most cases, you can save it. Like, as long as you pass one more credit at the end of the year, or you manage to do. If you can get an aggregated credit for this and you do this, maybe your degree is going to take an extra year, but you're not going to get excluded, and so that's fine. Life can go on. But yeah, people also do this magical thinking sometimes when they're like, "Oh, I'm just going to work harder and then it's going to be fine." And I'm like, well, what does that mean? You're going to work harder, right? So like, what are you actually going to do? No, I don't know. Like, but what? Right? What is your actual plan? So sometimes people panic, but they don't really set anything up to make sure that things are different in the second semester. So don't panic, but also take it seriously in the sense of what are you going to do differently in the second semester.
And you said you were once a warden. I'm sure your race was performing very good academically.
Don't make that assumption. Don't make that assumption at all.
Because the support that you have, it's like, as wardens, you need to support the people who are residing within the race, which is something that you have that some of the wardens don't have. But that's why I'm giving assumptions that your race was performing very good academically.
They did okay generally, but like I can't control everything, and B, once you're a warden, people are like, there's the warden, and they go and hide, or they just see you as some kind of wicked person who's there to give them hours. I mean, I hardly gave hours as a warden. I was not a very disciplining kind of warden. I'd moan at people, but I wasn't like super strict. But still, people are weird. So, they don't necessarily come and get help when they need it. They don't necessarily, race dynamics are very strange things. I can't explain them to you. So, no, I don't think you should assume that my race was doing better than other races academically.
And I think we're about to wrap up. And I thank you, Ms. Judith, for your time, and all the best with your research.
Thank you.